Welcome to For the Love of Books, Bees Books Edition, a podcast by North Lanarkshire Libraries.
Hi, this is Pari.
And this is Jenny, and we're here to talk about
Bees Books, a festive edition.
Yes.
These are not sleigh bells, they're my earring bells. Which, I just wanted to get it out of the way in case you hear a random...
Yeah, I should get out the way then, my tummy just rumbled.
Oh.
So either you're going to hear bells or tummies.
Well, they're both festive, right? You wait forever to eat a Christmas food, like the Christmas meal, and your tummy is rumbling. So
yes.
we're on theme. Well, this week's theme, I think, was really apt. Mm-hmm. It was cozy reads, and today particularly, -3 degrees when I stepped out of the house.
Very cold.
Very cold.
Very cold.
Very cozy read time.
Yes, it's the kind of time where you want to just go back into your house, go back upstairs, get under the duvet and get your book out. Yeah. Not go to work or the shops or anywhere else.
I've always advocated for this, Jenny, and by always I mean I think the last 2 years, 3 years that I've been struggling with winter here, is that I think everything should shut for winter.
Absolutely.
We should all hibernate as a society, as a human society. Nobody should expect things of anybody else, and we should just eat, not let our tummies rumble, hot chocolate, books, TV.
Turn into polar bears that read, basically. That's it.
That's a book character there, polar bears that read. And then solve murders, maybe.
Yes.
Because, speaking of which, that's my first cozy read.
Oh, excellent.
It's a murder. As you know, I love trying to fit into murder. And you've seen this book.
I have.
Because somebody at work, one of the library assistants, she saw this cover and she thought of me, which I quite like because this it's a very ridiculous looking cover.
Yes, it's nice.
Very nice, but silly. And it's called Murder by Narwhal. A Grimacre's Whodunit by Alex T. Smith. So he's the writer as well as the illustrator, and there's a lot of pictures as well. He's a very talented chap all around. So can't wait to talk about this book.
Okay, so I'm looking at the cover. Is somebody got an eye patch on?
That's our main protagonist, whose name is Edna. Who has a horrible grandfather who is the murder victim and couldn't have been anybody more deserving to be murdered.
Excellent. There's also a tortoise with a woolly hat on.
Her pet tortoise, her pet turtle, whose name is Charles Darwin.
Oh.
And he wears a tea cozy as a jumper because that's what fits on him. And he's sometimes helpful in solving clues.
Okay, I need to know more about this. But I'm going to show you one of my books.
Yes.
Okay. And my first book is very much a cozy read, which is what everyone's going to think. So it's Jenny Colgan and Midnight at the Christmas Bookshop. So last year, about this time...
I remember. Yes. She sounds vaguely familiar.
I did the book before this. And this came out just in time. And I thought, yes, you're mine. And it is the perfect book to just cozy up with. With a hot chocolate, under the duvet, just reading it. It's a lovely book.
So see, I feel like in my ideal world where everyone goes into hibernations, except bookshops at midnight when you should be able to go in and like have a reading party where you can ignore everybody.
Oh, a reading party, Pari.
Everyone.
We need to make this happen.
Yeah. So everybody comes in. There's hot chocolate, maybe pajamas because it's midnight. You might nod off, and you're just like with other people who are reading, but you don't have to talk to them.
That's even better.
You can. Maybe there's like a 15-minute talking break where you can say that, oh my god, this book is amazing. Oh my god, this book is horrible. Please never read it. I'm going to pick another book from the shelf and continue reading it because you are at a Christmas bookshop.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah. So I am going to tell you a little bit about this book. Alex T. Smith, I think he got really popular for writing for much younger kids. Claude series. It's like a dog whose name is Claude.
Oh, yes.
And that's all I know about it.
Yes,
I haven't
that's
read.
all I know as well.
It's on, I think I have a copy of it back in Mumbai, but I never got around to reading it. But he wrote this for, in his dedications and his acknowledgements at the end, he said that he wrote it for his grandfather, who's not at all like the terrible grandfather in this book, who is really a piece of work. And he says that he was a librarian, a teacher, and a writer. And he also introduced him to golden age crime fiction. So he wrote, and he like Miss Marple on TV and Agatha Christie and stuff. So he says, many years ago, I promised that I would write a book just for him, one filled with all his favorite things: snow, roaring fires, mystery, murder, and silliness. And now I have. And that's exactly, like, I wanted to read this because that encapsulates it perfectly. It's a mystery. It's technically for kids, but you know, we don't, the two of us don't care about
Absolutely.
that. And it's a really good murder. Like, it's a it's a really good murder. It is, because it's by narwhal. But it's a really good mystery. So there's, you know, everything that you want out of a golden age mystery. So there's like all these suspicious characters, most of which are Edna, our eye patch wearing girls family. And they're like aristocrats, but sort of the children are a bit like they have money problems and stuff. So it's the grandfather who's like hoarding all the house, this fancy house, and they've come to this house, and then they, like, the grandfather is murdered. This is not a spoiler. It's like written like right in the back, and they have to figure out. Like, she decides to figure out, like, help, because she thinks of herself as this, and she's not like, you know, the book that we read, Flavia de Luce?
Yes, I have.
Yep, so she's a bit like that, like a precocious sort of young girl who is into things that young girls are not supposed to be into. It doesn't say when it's set and like at what period, but it feels like it's the 1920s, 30s. Okay. Because there's not really technology and stuff, and she's like having to live by her wits, and she does. And she's like into like and especially at that time when gender roles were so much more prescribed. Her mom is always tiring of her because she's not this like proper girl, because she's into like murder and poisons and stuff. And there's like a good cast of characters. Even the horrible grandfather is like just magnificent in his horribleness. Even after like he's dead, we find out more and more about him, which is always good. And there's lots of red herrings, lots of potential murderers. And I was kept like, I love being able to guess, but I also love not being able to guess. And this one, I thought I had guessed, and I hadn't. Until the very end, until just before, which was great, because I think he does such a good job in putting out like various potential things, and he draws attention to one while slipping in another, so like a bit like a magical act. So it's really good, and it's the first in a series.
Excellent, that's what I wanted to hear.
So I think this is really new, so I think it'll still be some time before it comes out, but this is a nice chunky book. I read it over a weekend, and it was like, I thoroughly recommend it to kids and adults because it's just a really good mystery, fantastic characters.
I also heard that you said it was illustrated.
It is, yes. So he just, because he's, I think, like, I mean, just like in the middle of sort of, so not like in an early chapter book or a picture book would be, but because he is the writer and illustrator, he just has like these little nuggets strewn in every chapter, which is quite nice as well. I guess he can do that because you know, this is a lovely thing of a mongoose and a snake, because the house is that exact kind of murder mystery house that you want. It's like full of these like spooky things and like museumy things and stuff.
I imagine it's going to be like a library, and it's going to have like, you know, strange things
and
in it.
There's also like, there's rumors this house is really old and really famous for that, and there's always been rumors of secret passages, but nobody's found the secret passage. So like, she's trying to look for a secret passage. So it's all those elements that you want. So there's no like, nothing like subversive or anything about it, except I guess Charles Darwin the tortoise, who sometimes wanders into crime mysteries. But really, like, this is, I feel, like a cozy, comforting read, because you know exactly what to expect in terms of the genre, and it's all there. And you want a good mystery, you want good characters, and they're all there. So read this. I read this cozily in the sofa over the weekend.
Excellent.
And it was like, totally recommend.
It's going on my list.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember that you had said that you were going to read it, and I'd forgotten about it.
Yeah.
So
I was saving it for the perfect moment, because I've decided that the rest of the year, the rest of December, is just going to be dedicated to my favourite kinds of books, middle grade and non-fiction.
Excellent. That is a good plan. That is a good plan. Well, I'm going to talk about my book, and I'm just very sneakily trying to work out what the one before was called.
Something about a Christmas bookshop.
I think it was just called The Christmas Bookshop.
Yeah.
So, yes, I spoke about this before, and our main character, called Carmen, gets fired from a job, as far as I can remember, and has to move in with her sister and ends up working in this bookstore in Edinburgh. It's set in Edinburgh. And it's a struggling bookstore, and she comes up with a few ideas that she's got from her previous job and things like that, and kind of makes a go of it. You know, the owner, Mr. something or other, is a wee bit, he's kind of old, and he doesn't really like selling books because he likes the books themselves. But she kind of makes things happen. She meets a boy, and they get together at the end of the last one. This is now what happens after that, which I quite like. Although I do like a happy ending, I kind of do like to know
what next.
Then what happens. You know. It's why I like series, because the story keeps going. And I do hope she writes one next year to keep us
just for
going.
the podcast.
Yes, yes. Thanks, Jenny. Yes, please. So this is set kind of over the next year. And OK, her boyfriend, things happen there, so things are not as rosy as they seem. He goes off to I think it's the Amazon or somewhere like that, just because he's into trees, and there's like you'll know better than me what this is called, but like a kind of expedition to kind of investigate the trees and do all that kind of stuff.
That does sound pretty cool though, to
be fair. Well, yes. The bookshop is still struggling, you know, as bookshops do, especially independent bookshops. But it's on a lovely wee street in Edinburgh, and there's other wee kind of shops. And basically there is a person who is buying over shops and making them into like touristy shops with like very kind of loads of Nessie and that kind of thing, just
selling Scotland.
Yes, which isn't the real Scotland, it's the touristy Scotland. And he's wanting to take over a couple of shops on this street. He has his eye, yes. He has his eye on the bookshop and the hardware store across the street. So suddenly, you know, from being like everything lived happily ever after, etc., etc., reality is actually set in. So, you know, the bookshop is struggling. One day they take no money at all, you know, and it's kind of early in the year, and a film crew want to use the bookshop to do some filming. So as a way to make money, they say yes. So in the middle of June, I think it is, they have a snow machine outside and things like that, because it's going to be a very Scottish bookshop love story kind of a thing, except the female character's more Irish than Scottish when she puts on her accent. And
typical Hollywood.
Yes, yes, it's exactly that. It's kind of like, and it's a straight to streaming movie as well. So, you know, it's not high budget, but the stars in it are people that in this fictional world people know. And it's kind of like, you know, they're standing outside watching this get filmed, and the poor bookshop gets turned around a wee bit because of that. And then, you know, it goes to production. And as these things are, you know, they get filmed in July and they don't come out till the following Christmas and things like that. But this is kind of a wee bit quicker than that. And so they've got a wee bit of money from that. But the owner of the shop, and I apologise because I've completely forgotten his name, and it's something very Scottishy, he's decided that he wants to go to the Antarctic just for fun.
These are very adventurous men
yes.
scattered about in this book.
But obviously he needs money to do that because the bookshop's not making any money. So we find out that the bookshop is really... So Edinburgh, if you know Edinburgh at all, is very much a city of levels. So you can be in a shop on one street, and the top of the street is on street level of another street. It's very kind of higgledy-piggledy.
What a fantastic phrase that I've not heard in a while. Higgledy-piggledy, yes.
So you find out that the front of the shop that we know in this wee lovely street actually goes a lot further back and a lot higher up.
Right.
And so the owner lives on like upstairs, but his front door is on, you know, another street completely.
Sounds so magical.
Yes.
No wonder Hollywood keeps making movies
exactly.
in Edinburgh.
And so, you know, she has some ideas about maybe opening up the shop a wee bit wider. And, you know, he's a wee bit like, but they're my books and I don't want to sell them. She also is having problems because obviously her boyfriend is gone, and she's kind of struggling a bit like that. Her sister that she lives with, so Carmen is her sister's just had a baby and she's off work just now, and Carmen kind of takes babysitting duties every now and again, but her sister's going back to work, so she's going to get a nanny in to watch. So she's 4 kids, and the youngest being the baby. So basically Carmen's kind of hinted at that she's living in the nanny's bit of the house, so maybe she needs to so she's got all this stuff going on, and I loved it because, as I say, the last book kind of finished and it was lovely, you know, happy ever after, but as I say, reality doesn't work out like that, and it kind of is taking you through the next year up to Christmas the following year, of how she actually is, you know, lives and gets on with things. So I'm going to spoil it slightly. She does get kicked out. So she then goes and lives in the bookshop's owner, that I want to suddenly say is Mr. McCready, but I might be lying. Live in part of his house, because he's got this huge big house, but he kind of basically lives in the back room of the bookshop. So,
so because he's like, my precious, nobody gets
exactly.
I think he needs to find a new career.
Well, yes, and it's quite good that maybe he wants to go on this polar expedition, because so she finds at the very top of the house, she opens up a door and there's a beautiful big conservatory with like these half dead plants in it, and like, you know, and that's where she kind of moves into, tries to get the plants to live again. And it's got a fantastic view out on the city, but there's no heating because you know, it's an old house, and he doesn't live up there anymore, so he doesn't do anything, and it's kind of cold, and you know, she basically spends her time like we would under a duvet, kind of running around, things like that.
But hers is enforced, which is not as fun.
Because although we would want to hibernate, we would still want heating, to be fair. But yeah, so she kind of, it's how she then goes on to work out her own life, because she's at that age where, you know, most of her friends have kind of settled down, they've got families, you know, her sister's got, you know, this, and she's just kind of still a waif. And just kind of wandering around.
Wandering waif.
Yes. But again, it has a nice ending. But again, there's potential for what happens next. The evil shop owner does take over the hardware store, and it basically plays bagpipes all day, every day, much to the other shops' kind of horror. There's a lovely character called Brona, I want to say, who owns a kind of witchy shop. And like, you know, she kind of is like hinting at putting curses on this guy and things like that, you know, and talking about the, you know, the witches of old Edinburgh and things like that. You know, there's quite a lot in it for all it being what I would term as a light and fluffy book. There's quite a lot in it, but it's definitely a cosy read. It's definitely a book to sit and just not have to concentrate, just sit and read it with your duvet and, you know, your hot chocolate and your big fluffy slippers on.
I think there's a lot of potential. If Jenny Colgan wants my advice, she can do a spin-off Halloween witch shop series, and like with her hurling curses at all those who have wronged her, and learning about the witches of Edinburgh and like the Wiccan side of the city.
She's not James Patterson, but she's a very prolific writer.
Right.
And so she does have lots, but there is quite a good bit as we're going through the year. Christmas seems to be the main time for the bookshop, and it's got beautiful window displays, but the character Carmen does do something at Halloween, except she reads Coraline, which can be quite scary, and a lot of the kids do not like it, and a lot of the parents are scared. So she tries her best to do like story times and things, but at Halloween this is what she does. And even I think the bookshop owner's like, you chose that story, that's horrendous.
I mean, it's a fantastic story for a specific kind of kid.
Yes, but maybe not just random kids off the street.
Even as an adult, like Button Eyes is quite terrifying. Absolutely. The idea of like your loved ones being replaced by Button Eyed.
Yes. But I quite like the idea that she just goes with it. And just like, what are you scared of? You know, this is the
commit to it. Now you've committed. Like it builds character, Jenny.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so I think it's good on her.
Yes, but you know, Christmas bookshop next year could be Halloween bookshop.
It could be.
What happens on the street then.
And then she should have something for every season.
Yes.
And something that she introduces another character.
Exactly.
With like another. So for me, I think cozy reading, I'm using the excuse, like I said, to just read all the books that have been putting off. Because like I've been waiting for the perfect time, and this is the perfect time because I love having books to look forward to. Even though there are so many books, I'll always have books to look forward to.
So many books.
Yeah, but my favorite genre as well, it's fantasy as well, but middle grade favorite, and I love non-fiction as well. So I've started reading this one, which is also from our shelves, a new book. And it has like a very serious sounding title, Life Lessons from Historical Women by Eleanor Morton. But if you've never heard of Eleanor Morton, which I know her from through Twitter, she's a comedian. Okay. She's a Scottish comedian, lives in Edinburgh, and is like really funny, like really sort of like a very specific kind of humor, but she like posts these videos and stuff. So I was sold on her. Here, as you see, she's dressed up in like a historical get up but holding a cell phone and looking very serious.
I mean, she's got like a kind of Marie Antoinette look going on.
That's true,
with
that's
a bright
true.
yellow mobile phone.
Yeah, which is like, I think that's her vibe and that's this book's vibe. So I was sold on it from her thing, and then I read a little bit more about it, and she's like, she's capitalizing on the self-help trend, which is why it's life lessons from historical. So she's like, but I'm not using all the weird psychological mumbo jumbo. I just wanted to write about these women, but I also wanted the book to sell because I'm a broke comedian. So self-help, life lessons.
Excellent.
And she just has a selection of like 16 different women from different parts of the world and different periods in history and different fields as well, but who are not super well known. Like they might be well known to certain people in certain niches who have like knowledge about it, but she is a history nerd, so she writes right up front in the introduction that, look, I'm not an academic or anything, but I love these stories, I love history, and I wanted it to make it more accessible to people. And you know, like I love accessible history, and she does, because she's just writing about them, and she's a comedian, so it's really funny. Like I've like laughed out loud at like in my commuter train coming into work, being really cozy because the heating thankfully in the trains is on full blast. So it's been lovely. The last like couple of days I've just been reading this on the train. And it's funny, but it's also really interesting. And at one point, I got super emotional. Like yesterday, going back, just because she writes about one of the women who was the first woman who ran in the Boston Marathon in 1966, when it was illegal for women to run in the marathon. So there was this woman whose name, I'm so sorry, I've completely forgotten, but you can read this book and find out. But she wrote about how she just wanted to like run. She started running for like, you know, fun and stuff, which like, as Eleanor says, I don't understand people who run, especially people who run marathons. But good on her, she should be able to do. So I was like, yeah, from a distance I'm admiring her. But she wanted to run and she tried to submit an application. And at that point, 1966, which is not even that long ago, was very politely told, declined, saying that women can't run more than a mile and a half. It's physiologically impossible. Like this is, I don't know what they thought, uteruses would fall out, or like they'd get fainting fits, don't know what. So this woman, she decided to like hide in the bushes, and Eleanor is like, that doesn't like show the most mental like wellness. Like she's not making a great case for herself stalking the marathon from the bushes, but she wanted to like run, and she thought if she went out all gung-ho, they'd like stop her, and she was the first woman who tried. And she was really afraid that, you know, like the men on the thing would mock her or like, you know, like stop her or whatever. But most of the men that she encountered like were really like, oh my god, that's so cool, a woman, or like my wife wanted to run, and like I wish there were more women and stuff. And then like in the midway point, this girls' college, Wellesley in New York, in Boston, was there, and they were all, the students had come and they were cheering her on. And like by I think like three quarters of the way through, she was really tired, and she had this goal for herself to get it done in 3 hours, which is a pretty decent, apparently, I don't know, thing.
3 days.
Yeah. But she was like really tired, and she's like, oh, it's already been 3 hours, what's even the point? but like, you know, she knew because she'd like started, because by that point, like, photographers had started taking pictures. There were like news crews following her journey, and she's like, oh my god, is anybody even going to be there? Like at the end, I've taken so long. And when she reached the end, there was this whole like cadre of people just cheering her on because she was the first. And like, it made me so emotional because I'm like, you don't think of this like within living memory. Like some of the people she writes about is like old timey people, when you're like, oh yeah, altitudes then were so rubbish. But this is now, and she writes about a few more like a recent history with some like past history in different parts of the world. I just love it. I'm about 1/3 of the way through. It's really easy. It's a really quick, easy read, super accessible, and I'm loving learning about not just the women but the different fields as well, because she's written about artists in Italy, an artist in Italy, and about a mountaineer, the first woman who climbed Mount Everest and things. So just like really lovely and like, and very funny.
Is it one of these books that you could just read a chapter about, you know, one of the women and then skip on to somebody else? And
absolutely,
that kind of thing?
yeah. And also like just read a chapter and like leave the book, read something else, come back to it, because it's all standalone. But I'm just reading it in one sitting because it's in the train, so it's like a limited time. And I'm just like, it's really giving me some, like, I'm looking forward to the journey because I want to know more about these women. And it's super quick. So I think I'll like finish this in a couple of days as
Although
well.
I quite like the idea that you're just going to stay on the train.
And
just
like head on.
I'm not getting off here. Just stay on and read a bit more.
I know, because like I keep having to, like, I've almost missed my stop a couple of times because I'm trying to get to the end. But no, it's just really nice. She writes with a lot of, I think, love, but also research and like it's a great balance, I think, of history, but also like contextualizing it to our lives today, because she's like, I obviously am like a specific person at a specific period of time writing about these women who might not recognize or agree with what I'm saying, but this is what they are doing to me. So I just wanted other people. So it's just like a history nerd nerding out and wanting to convert other people to be history nerds, which I think is great.
Is there anybody that we would know straight away from their names? Is there anybody that jumps out, or is it not obscure people but just, you know, more interesting?
I guess Pocahontas.
Oh, is it right? Okay.
Yeah, so she was the one that I think I just read about while coming here, and she talks about how she like grew up loving the movie, and then as a child and then as an adult has learned like the other side, and she wanted to write about the other side. Like she wanted to humanize the person who we may know from this Disney movie in a very incomplete way, and she's just trying to like, in the introduction she writes about how for a lot of like famous women, they become like these idealized versions of themselves, like these perfect, good, great, never do wrong type. And she was not interested in that kind of story because she wanted to write about the times that they were, you know, like being either mad, or like mad as in like angry, and silly or whatever, or like petty,
grumpy.
Yeah. And because she thought that is more like, those are the kinds of stories we need more, because it adds more humanity. Like they're not just these. Because so that's, I guess, the self-help part of it, because she's like this, they're just regular women, you know, they just like, they did these things, of course they have like specific characteristics that got them this far in this particular field, but there's a lot of other people like that who do things in small and big ways. Like she starts the story, the introduction, with something her grandmother did, like really like that was important to her as a granddaughter, like she's heard stories of, but she's like, that's probably not changed the world. It might have influenced maybe somebody in this pub in the US, but maybe not. But still, she always did these small everyday things, and we don't hear those stories. So that's why she's writing about them, I guess. And I just love the book.
No, it does sound really good, actually. It does sound something that I might try.
This I would recommend for you, because it is really accessible and it's funny, and it's about lives that you might not have encountered before, or you might have, like Pocahontas, but maybe you want to learn a different side of the story, which is also really interesting. That's what she said, that she's like, I loved her story in the film, which is what got me into like this, and then like now I want to love her story and like share her story as an adult as well.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a very cozy cover though, if you know what I mean.
Well, I'll show you the back, in which she makes all sorts of faces in her Marie Antoinette and phone cover, which I guess is also not cozy because I don't think you want to sit in this gown on the sofa.
Exactly. For very long.
But I've been dressed very cozily in the train where I've been reading it. So yes, no, it's not a cozy cover, but it's a fun cover.
Yes, it is. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Right, well, I have another book that I have, and I shall show you the cover of it. And you'll maybe see why I thought it was maybe cozy.
Okay.
So this is the back.
Oh. Oh, I don't know if I like this man's face staring at me. Oh my God.
And it's called...
And you thought this was cozy, you say?
Well, okay, so it's called The Silence Factory by Bridget Collins.
And just to describe, if I could,
yes,
my first impressions, because I've never heard or seen this book, the back that Jenny showed me is just a man's upper half of his face just staring quite intently and a bit unsettlingly at you, and the mouth is like red, like it's been taken over by like red something on which there is text, and then the front is a woman, same unsettling stare, same I don't know that I want to keep looking at her, and her mouth is also like slashed aside by this red leaves, I want to say. I don't know what those are.
I'm going to tell you what it is. It's silk.
Oh my God, I don't know if that makes it worse or better.
It's kind of looks like frayed material her face, and there's silk in her mouth.
Right, and this is cozy.
Did not notice that at all when I picked up.
No, okay, good.
I also didn't notice the tiny, tiny spiders.
Oh, right,
yes.
Okay, so you are reading about scary things.
Yes.
To be cozy.
Which is not my cup of tea at all.
No.
But I like Bridget Collins. She's done another couple of books, and they're very, I think you would like them. They're odd.
Oh, the covers do look odd.
So we've got the portrayals and something else again. Maybe like a goldfish. The binding.
I've seen both those books, I'm pretty sure, but the binding, I can even remember the cover.
Yes, yeah. And they're quite odd. They're kind of familiar-ish stories, but with a twist.
Oh, I love that.
Yes. The binding was very well done. It was kind of done from different points of view as you went through the book, and it was very good. But they're the kind of books you kind of need to concentrate on, which is good if you're cozy reading.
Yeah.
This is where I'm going.
Yeah.
Because you are kind of more... Jenny Colgan, you didn't really need to concentrate on. You just whisk through the book. But sometimes you want something, that you do have to concentrate on.
And you lose yourself in.
Yes. So when I seen this, and I don't know how I missed it because it was out earlier this year, I thought, I'm going to take you.
Yeah.
But I did not look at the cover at all. I didn't read the blurb. I just went, author I like, I'll take you.
Oh, right. Oh, yes. That's sometimes really like... That can either work great in your favour or it can be shambles, but it's still an interesting experiment.
Yes. So I just went straight into it. I just went right into the book. I just finished the book anyway, so I just started it. And it wasn't until I was a few pages in I thought, maybe I should actually read what this is about. And I think there's a whole chapter in. And it is lovely in its way, the front pages and that are
it's gorgeous, stunning,
done.
Yeah.
And if you just glance at the cover and not look at the
scary
bits or the spiders.
Yeah.
So it starts out in an island in Greece in the 18-something or others. I want to say 1820s. And it's a man and his wife, and they've went on a kind of scientific exploration. Well, the man has, because at that time, the woman just kind of tagged along. And they go to this island where the man, who again, names, I should write them all down to begin with, he has heard from this other kind of scientist type person about these spiders, and then he's not heard of again. I think he kind of disappears. So they go out to investigate.
I'm into it so far.
Yes. So it's kind of like a diary, her diary of what she kind of sees. And then in between that is the story set, I think it's like her great nephew. So I'm thinking 1890s, although I don't think it ever kind of quite says that. But it's the Industrial Revolution and all that kind of stuff. It's around about that time. And it's basically how, you're getting this story of where this silk came from, and then the story of the silk factory. A couple of generations later. So basically on the island, there's this kind of sacred grove And this is just how I read it, so if you read it and see something different. But there's this kind of sacred grove, and obviously Greece is where all these fantastic myths and legends come from, including the one with the Minotaur and the thread.
Ariadne.
Yes,
thread,
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. By quite a nasty man who then dumps her afterwards.
Yes. Perseus?
Theseus,
one of
like
those
that.
dude bros.
Yes. Who're all muscle and blonde hair and kind of, you know...
False promises.
Yes, and then all these poor women at that time just kind of shunted to the side because somebody else comes along.
Yep.
And I did do a bit of investigating into that because it's kind of in the story, if you know. I mean, it's not in the story, but it's like hinted at and things like that, these kind of myths. So anyway, so we're on this island, and the character, nameless character we'll call her, kind of, you know, is left to her own devices basically while he does all his investigating, and she kind of befriends, you know, a woman of the village and things like that. And you see from her point of view, basically her husband's quite mean, and just kind of ignores her except when he wants her for something, and you know, that kind of stuff. But she kind of learns to swim and she kind of settles in. But he is more interested in these spiders. He can't find these spiders. Nobody's interested in telling him anything. But we learn that the spiders' webs are quite strange. So they're not just normal spider webs. There's kind of an echo of them almost. And again, echo being a Greek myth, which I then went down a rabbit hole and researched. It's kind of just hinted at. Meanwhile, you know, we're kind of finding out about this factory that makes this silk, that one side blocks out noise, but on the other side there's noise like echoes and, you know, strange things, but they're concentrating on selling this silk basically as a soundproofing kind of thing and all these kind of things. So the owner of the factory goes to this shop which sells basically hearing aids, but of that time. I want to investigate that more because they seem to do like so many different types of hearing aids, whether it's true or not, or whether it's just Bridget Collins' world. All very fancy and, you know, not just the grey kind of nubs that we think of now that get stuck in your ear.
Like making it an accessory.
Yes, which I quite like the idea of.
I love it.
Glasses are done the same way. You know, we have fabulous glasses, but hearing aids are just kind of...
That's true, like hidden away. So it goes to this shop because his daughter is hard of hearing. I think she's deaf now. Talks to the guy in the shop, and he eventually goes to the house, the big posh house of the factory owner, to talk to the girl, find out if they can do anything. But as he's driving through the village, the factory village, he gets ill. It's almost as if, you know, there's some sounds and things like that. So the carriage has these curtains on it, which is made of this silk, which blocks out the sound. But if he moves the curtain, the sound comes in. And it turns out a lot of the children in the area have went deaf. And it seems to be emanating from this kind of factory and the fact that they're making silk. I'm trying to describe this without spoiling anything. No, but it's you're sort of creating a great aura of like mystery. Eerie sort of,
So he gets to the house and the girl's deaf. There's not much that he can do, but we then kind of learn why she's deaf and, you know, about the silk, and it comes from these spiders that the guy bought back from the Greek island by basically stealing them out of this sacred grove. Comes back and works out how to make their webs into silk basically, but it's so expensive to make that the factory owner's kind of struggling. So the factory owner's the scientist's kind of great nephew, and our main character, who again, sorry, names, he's, I want to call him Wilbur, it's not Wilbur, he's kind of like discovering this, kind of falls a little bit for the factory owner, kind of wants to make good for him, and ends up coming with these ideas of what they could do with silk. So not just like curtains, they could be used for this, that, and like basically blocking out noise for everything. So he's talking about putting them in baby rooms so that, you know, they don't hear the outside noise, so they get better sleep. making them into like funeral dresses and things to kind of, but they concentrate on the silent part of it and not the kind of echoey part of it.
Do they know about the echoey part of it?
Yes, but they kind of turn a blind eye to it because basically what they do is they fold the silk over, so both sides would be, do you know what I mean? So he comes up with all these ideas, and then, you know, they put out like a big catalogue for people of how to, you know, how they could use these things for different things. And he gets like this big show home basically, and everything in the show home's all kind of done. But in the meantime, we also get Wilbur, story as well, because he's had a family which has disappeared, which is why he's working in this hearing aid shop, and you find out his wife died and things like that. And it's just one of those stories that you end up wanting to just get to the end, because there's so many twists and turns. Nobody's murdered or anything like that, but it's like a twisty-turny thing where you kind of want to find out what happened on the Greek island, what happened after that, you know, where are these spiders kept, how are they getting, you know, why are the children going deaf, you know, because obviously at that time children were, you know, under the looms taking out all the bits that kind of dropped to the floor, and there was always accidents and things like that at that time. But for these kids, it's all kind of going deaf, and it's just like such a brilliant world to kind of be in, and it has a great ending, which I'm not going to spoil for you, and it's just one of those stories that it was one of you want to kind of snuggle down, ignore the world, and just live in this world for a while.
Do you think you could categorize it into like a genre?
Nope. It's one of those books that could sit on a science fantasy shelf, it could sit in general fiction, it could sit in, you know, something very, very niche, and that's what all our stories are like. You know, they're very much like put in general fiction because there's nowhere else to put them, and I quite like that idea, because I think that if you niched it too much, if that's a word, a lot of people wouldn't read it who would enjoy it. But yes, it's
no, it sounds really, like you said, weird.
Yes.
In a good way.
Yes.
Yeah, not because some books can be weird in a bad way.
but there's lots of the kind of myths and things kind of woven through it.
It sounds very unusual, which I like.
Yes. As I say, I really enjoyed the bindings, just because it was nothing I had ever read before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This has some familiarising things to it. Again, that's not a word. That, you know, kind of know from reading historical fiction, or, you know, that kind of a thing. You kind of know about the big factories, and you kind of know about the, you know, the scientists going off and the poor women getting left behind, you know, that kind of a thing. There's a kind of, remember that Frances Harding book, The Lie Tree?
Yeah.
That kind of, you know, feel to it, that these scientists are out there trying to discover things, and if they can't discover things, they might make things up just to make it more interesting. You know, and basically
which must have happened for
absolutely.
sure.
But how they kind of go and steal from other countries as well. You know, that kind of, you know, I don't care. We think you're primitive because you know, go into your grove and
don't believe in God. Oh my God.
Exactly, and that's very much, you know, when you're in the Greek island, you know, it's very much like, you know, these spiders are just spiders, you know, not what you think they are. So we don't feel any guilt about taking these spiders away. Whereas the woman kind of has made friends with the villagers. You know, she's helped out at births and things like that. She kind of sees that life is different, yes, but it's not anything less. You know?
Exactly.
And then she feels guilty about, you know, suddenly being on a boat coming back home. You know, leaving that kind of slight destruction.
Like using what you need and then leaving.
Yes,
I like that idea of sort of like the making the familiar strange. Like you said, she's taken all these things that you might have like recognized from other stories, and then sort of doing a what if kind of scenario, which I think is really cool.
No, absolutely. And I love the idea that, you know, somebody's come up with this silk basically that cuts out noise. But they don't talk about, so every now and again our main character will hear his wife's voice, who's obviously dead, but it's almost as if one half is silence, and the payback for that is you'll hear things that you shouldn't be able to hear. Does that make sense? And in the whole story, it's not really, you don't really hear much about that side of it. It's kind of how you interpret what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, that he maybe hears his wife's laugh and kind of turns round, but you know, that kind of a thing.
Oh, that sounds. I'm gonna put it on my list as well. Like, I think it sounds weird in a way that might be akin to like a winter weird reading.
Yes,
because
yes.
I like that idea of like, I guess you want to cozy up with sometimes familiar things like a murder mystery, but you have more time because it's so dark and the weather's miserable. So you have more time to, I guess, like you say, concentrate, pay attention, and like think and be with things that might be more, like need more of yourself and your brain than like at other times, because you have that time and the space.
Yes, and because you've got nothing else.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You can dedicate your time to that.
Yeah, fantastic.
But
I think our cozy reads have been great. We've like ranged the gamut from like normal to like weird.
You're not. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I say normal as like a pirate like person.
You're saying normal. Murder Marnarwa. Which is quite hard to say, but
That's
yeah.
True. Well, what about next time?
So next time B is going to set us in the task of books with, well, not with endings, because every book has an ending, but the theme endings, because we're coming towards the end of the year.
Right.
You know, this is the kind of time where a lot of people kind of reflect on what's went before.
Yeah.
Things kind of end, things start anew, so endings.
Okay. Well, you could have bought a Christmas bookshop as an ending, but it wasn't.
No.
It wasn't the end of the story. There was a
Also
whole
beginning.
new story. Yeah,
Yes.
which is nice, I
Yes.
think, because
Yes.
you like to think about what happened next. Or maybe you don't.
No, I do quite like to know
Yeah.
what happened next, especially with the Silence Factory.
Yeah.
With its ending, I want to know.
Well,
what did happen next?
I can't wait to read this weird, slightly unsettling book and think about endings.
Excellent.
Okay, goodbye for now.
Bye.